Hey, everybody. Once again, it's Jonathan Kirsting with the Pittsburgh Technology Council and Tech Vibe Radio. It's one mic stand here and talking to Adam Paulisick of Headstorm. Adam is no stranger to Tech Vibe Radio. We've been actually hanging out a lot, Adam, in the past few months. And I'm just impressed with what you guys do at Headstorm. And you reached out to me. You saw what we're doing with one mic stand. And I know you have some great information that I think is going to be super helpful to our membership and our listeners and viewers and stuff out there, Adam. So thanks for taking the time and talking with me today. I really do appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Jonathan, for having me. And, one of the hats I wear is, of course, a senior partner and the chief product officer at Headstorm, which is an impact engineering firm. But the other hat I wear and have for almost a decade now is professor at Carnegie Mellon University. And
I keep forgetting that you're a professor there, dude. I can start calling you Teach.
Yeah, please don't hold it against me. So the interesting thing, though, is I teach this little dirty word that outside of a recession is sort of shunned and oftentimes avoided, even though it's at the center of most major and sort of emerging businesses, which is sales. Right. And when we were talking, last time we were talking about sort of the way we're working in healthcare and ag tech and sort of writing, building software, building the kind of data pipelines. And that's certainly important. And then this sort of small economic factor sort of loomed above us. You may have heard of it. I think it's called the COVID.
Wait, I think I've heard of that. Yeah, it's a little thing. It's why we're all at home right now, right?
So it's marginally disruptive, even as service providers like myself. But what it really brought me back to, if you don't mind me sort of playing into the time machine.
Do it, man.
Is in 2009, I read probably one of the most impactful articles of my life by these three gentlemen. It was a Philip Lay, Todd Hewlin, and Jeffrey Moore. They wrote in the Harvard Business Review, "In a downturn, provoke your customers." Huh. And it was interesting because, one, that was the opposite of everything that I had ever read in a blog post.
Absolutely. Right.
Exactly. The legacy of spin selling and strategic positioning and solutioning and consulting. And it was all this collaborative effort. And these guys came out and said, you know what? When the economy gets bad, you got to shake things up and you got to get people moving.
Yeah.
And it made me think. And in fact, it was the spark that led me to write some of the classes I now have been teaching at CMU. Because what I realized in the recession is that doing a startup and being an entrepreneur is basically like operating a business all the time in a recession, right?
See, you told me that earlier before we hit the record button. I was like, I'm going to remember that and use it because I think that is dead set on. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, whether you're launching a restaurant or a rocket ship or software or hardware or a services business or nonprofit or for-profit, the early days are not for the faint of heart, right? Like you don't have anywhere near the resources or the talent or the timing or the access that you typically need. And so it got me thinking about why was everything that I was reading about being consultative as opposed to provocative?
Yeah.
Now for those that are kind of the sales gurus that I'm sure are harping in the background, I can hear them yammering and already trying to course correct and tune me. I don't want to downplay that every one of the 15 or 20 plus major selling styles or methods or methodologies certainly has its place, right? And I think there's a merit we could argue in another conversation.
Okay.
But what I wanted to kind of break the world up into, to oversimplify it a little bit, is there's basically two types of selling.
Yeah.
There is consultative, where you collaborate and build a hypothesis together. And there's provocative, where you basically lay that hypothesis right on somebody and you brace yourself.
How do you brace yourself? Is it clenching?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because it used to be that everything was around the psychology of getting to a yes, right? Which consultative and solution-based selling is really good at. Are you aware that you have a problem? Yes. Have you seen this as a pattern? Yes. Is there an opportunity to improve it? Yes. The challenge with consultative and solution-based selling is you can get 1,000 yeses that still lead to a no. And that's a scary concept, right? If you're not a really big contender with millions of dollars and lots of months in between the time you start a sale and the time you end it, right? I mean, there's lots and lots of stories out there about even selling to the enterprise and how everybody wants the big customer, but nobody wants to wait the 6 or 9 or 12 months to sort of bear the brunt of that process.
Right.
Provocative is a little different, and it sounds a little contrarian in the beginning, but let's see if I can make some sense of it with you. I want to come up with my best idea. Still not contrarian, makes sense, right? Good ideas, self-profit services.
All right, gotcha.
But I want to put it in a place that says, if you don't do this, I believe it is so catastrophic to your business or your strategy, you're thinking that in 6 or 12 months or 2 years, you're not going to exist. It is that light your hair on fire moment that says, if you don't pay attention to me and someone else finds out that you said no, you may not get promoted or you might even get fired.
Wow, okay.
Now, what happens, and what we joked about earlier about bracing for it is, you start with this really provocative statement of, I believe the future of, let's say, the staffing industry is all around this new and improved Uber Works model, right? Where I believe I can hand any small or medium business the ability to have an app, and they're going to go out into a marketplace and they're going to request, via job rec or whatever it might be, a dignified living wage for someone to come in and do a task, and that's how it's all going to happen.
Okay.
And there's going to be no one in the interim. Now, that sounds like a really scary idea to anyone who's been running a staffing center for the last 10, 50, 100 years, right?
You're shaking up the whole business plan they've had that's probably been feeding them well to a certain degree, right?
That's exactly right. And we're taking out the comfort and sort of incrementally or iteratively changing their business, right? Now, what I'm doing, even though hopefully I'm wearing a smile on my face, because I know that obviously helps, is bracing for the fact that they're going to tell me all the reasons why that can't work. But here's the magic in what just occurred. One, you acknowledge that what I said was close enough that you have a strong opinion against. Two, you've helped me in literally a matter of seconds, even maybe minutes, figure out what the delta is between your best thinking and my proposition.
Very cool. Right.
And it starts to create this snowball where now I am no longer information gathering, which can be taxing or exhausting or even demanding on existing resources or teams that are already spending their time doing important stuff. And now we're focusing on, like, what's the there, right? What's the big idea? What's the thing that if we did together, we co-created or co-designed, this would all start to move. Now, they probably are going to say no in some form, right? Oh, that's not exactly right, or it wouldn't make sense because of this, or this regulation, or this compliance, or we've tried this before, or this has failed. But every time they say to a no, I'm not getting broader with more general affirmation. I'm getting more narrow with specific.
That's right. That makes total sense. I like this. I need to take your classes.
please you're welcome to
someone more
Well, I think part of what happened, and this goes back to kind of Dave Mooney and the sort of broader Schwartz Center at Carnegie Mellon, is they realized that early ideas, right, people that had deep expertise or specialization, whether that came from academia or a big company where they now wanted to kind of pursue a smaller niche or a more addressable market, has to start somewhere, which is attention getting without being attention grabbing. Right. And so the misbelief about provocative sales is that it has to be offensive or it has to be intense or you have to use all the oxygen in the room.
Right.
And the reality is all you're doing is saying, if I could give you something that's really impactful, would you pay me for it? Right. And so provocative sales relies on this really simple expression that turns out we've tried it a bunch of ways. And it's just as simple as, like, if I give you this, then you'll give me that. Right. If I give you a significant savings or revenue increase or ease of life or reduction in friction, then will you give me, some sort of an investment in this product or software or service or whatever it might be? And so we've gone from a 6, 9, 12 plus month enterprise level consultative sale into sometimes a 1, 2, or 3 meeting provocative sale. Now, sometimes that leads to a hard no.
That's good, because you'd rather get a no early on and fast so you can move on to the next target than to string someone on for a year and then get the no. Because you waste a lot of time and resources, right?
You got it, Jonathan. I mean, as it turns out, the most expensive thing that can happen in the trap of early stage entrepreneurship, let alone more mature companies, is doing demos or demonstrations of value for people that have no interest in buying, right? Yeah. Plus, there's a lot of risk in consultative selling, right? Certainly you deepen the relationship. Certainly you can be there for the long haul. However, you're educating that buyer on your unique perspective. You're sharing a lot of that pointed strategic view that you have about where the opportunity is, how to be transformative again, and not just taking them in that linear next step, right? So those are those two big buckets that we've been talking about. And again, I think that right now in this recession, there's always a value in sort of sharing the landscape and providing meaningful foundational kind of benchmark work. But you're probably already in an attention and kind of cognitively starved world, right? People are going into maybe Zoom zombies, right? They are more interested in sort of what your background is and sort of what feline has crossed your desk or, what kind of environmental factors, you have going on. Then they are paying attention to something that doesn't feel like it's going to get them promoted, like it's going to get them advanced, like it's going to take market share. Fair enough?
Fair enough. I tell you what, so I mean, I think it's just so helpful. And I've got a couple things I want to talk to you about. So as an example of provocative selling, so actually back in January, which seems like eons ago, I was interviewing Jake Lucerian, the CEO of Gecko Robotics.
Mhm.
And this I just love this guy. This guy's got like balls, because he's telling me how like early on, but their first customer, not my first customer, the first person they wanted to do a demo with, they charged them for the demo. It wasn't even
Right.
giving it away. He was like saying, this thing is going to solve your problem and you're going to pay me. I'm going to show you how. And it worked. And I mean, he's been, obviously he has 40 million in VC behind him. He's been growing like crazy. I hope he's still doing well now with everything that's going on. I'm assuming he is, but I just was like, wow, this is from like a young dude that was like, no, he saw the value in his product. He knew it was going to solve a problem.
Yeah.
I would say he's being very provocative, right? By saying,
Yeah.
like, no, there's value here. You can afford to pay for this big energy company. You got the money. Let's
That's exactly right. Well, and
you are cool like that. So
that's right. Well, there is some glory and guts in being an entrepreneur. No one talks quite about the mental health that comes on the other side of that meeting, where you sort of
your friend's apartment's floor, you don't got much under the fall, right?
Yeah, the thing that you didn't see for Jake and Gecko Robotics is like, all the whispering to higher powers right before to the entrepreneurship gods that said, please let this work, as they went into it. But, you bring up a really important point that I also think is interesting about provocative selling, or kind of more of this clear exchange, which is that no question cash pays the bill. But in a down economy, provocative selling can also be used for sort of smaller half-step exchanges where you might say, listen, if I give you this product, will you give me your logo or a testimonial, or will you introduce me to another colleague, or right? And so provocative selling, even though that's certainly part of consultative selling, expands that network, right, and creates an exchange in every interaction. So it sounds like Gecko Robotics had a really, thoughtful way to do this, and whatever they were showing this energy company or the like, felt like, listen, at a minimum, whether you buy my product or somebody else's, this is a recipe to do it the right way. Exactly. Which is exciting.
So Adam, tell me, what are your thoughts on this? I know a lot of salespeople are grappling with this. I mean, we're grappling with this at the PTC, where, you got to keep selling. Like we just can't stop selling, because, life has to continue on despite the fact that everything's been put on this freeze. I mean, how is it appropriate to go out and start nurturing new relationships, or going back to the ones that you were maybe in the middle of? Because everybody wants to be, everyone's got a different story going.
Everyone's friends in a pandemic.
Just gonna stand to the side and just see what happens. Like it's very weird. I'm sure you're feeling that too. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I think I have a couple of point of views on it. So one is, I would say that authenticity, kind of trumps any individual circumstance we're going through now, right? And so, there's a way that it used to be in the old days that a sort of someone who was calling you randomly, a cold caller, would call you, and just by the way they were breathing, you could tell that they wanted something from you and they didn't know you, right? It immediately caused that sort of visceral response. I think there's a challenge out there around how, as a relationship builder, whether you're selling or growing or sort of extending whatever you have, wants to sort of be authentic and empathetic to sort of what's going on. I mean, as a parent in the world, right, where we've started our very own cyber school here in my home, and it's been disruptive to my wife, who has a small business. But the first question is what kind and sort of depth of relationship do you have, and sort of how do you want to sort of extend and support them in this time?
Right.
And I think there's a lot of fool's gold in doing the kind of like the happy sandwich, where it's like, hey, hope you're doing really well in the world, because no one is right now. Everything is chaos, right? Then it's like, hey, I know you're doing well, so like, let me talk to you about this business, and if you need anything from me, let me support you, right? And that formula, unfortunately, percolates. I don't know how many messages I'm getting a day via, LinkedIn, or the like. So the first foremost thing you have to think about is like, what's the real currency, or what's the value you're exchanging right now, right? And so, some of the stuff that Headstorm has done is we put together some, white papers and some point of views on the data supply chain and agriculture. We've thought a lot about releasing some of our design engineering methods, right? How to move faster in the process. So the first thing I did was I took an inventory of everything I actually have to offer that I might have charged for in the past, and sort of brought that to the surface, right? And said, you know what, listen, we all need a helping hand right now.
Definitely.
I think the second part of it is to own the reality that no one is comfortable, in this new world. And I think that we all pretend like there's going to be a new normal, but I think most people would prefer there to be an opportunity to have and build relationships in more traditional, ways than sort of creative Zoom backgrounds. And so I think it's important to kind of wear that through in the messages and to talk about how you're willing to invest and what you're willing to do. So, the position Headstorm has taken is that we are ready to, invest engineers, build proof of concepts, do workshops with people, even though that feels like the opposite of what you want to be doing.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And that's important because you have to have a regional mindset. You have to recognize that the banks, the law firms, the hospital systems are all strained at this moment. They're all having problems with efficiency. And so coming to them and saying like, hey, I just need 15 or 20 minutes still is a tax if you're not having something new and exciting to talk about in those areas. So, listen, we want, and we hope others will want to work with people that see this as an opportunity to take ground. Right? This is an opportunity in those messages to talk about the ideas you have, the things you think can shift, the trends you see moving around the business to get ahead. And if a business wants to actually put on a pause for 5 or 6 months, that's probably not the right type of business that anyone, at least as an entrepreneur, wants to work with, right? I mean, that type of luxury happens.
That might be a sign. They're like, maybe take that one off the list or something.
Yeah. Well, and also if this is what happens with clients and customers when things are rough and tumble, right? Inherently, what's going to happen is that you're going to see this pattern emerge when it's not a pandemic, when it's not a recession.
Right. Something else during that relationship is going to prove maybe that's not a customer that you want to be working with.
That's right. And in the same reverse, like we're seeing all kinds of incredible leadership stand up, right? I mean, you look at, big healthcare systems in, Pittsburgh. I saw Highmark and UPMC like really stand up and say, here's how we're investing. This is what we're thinking. Here's going into our assignments, right? We're seeing utility companies really think about digital delivery and how to communicate with their customers, how to build smarter access to energy and sort of resources using all sorts of local startups, along that way. So it's not paused, but the two messages I want to take away are there is no one that needs an inauthentic message right now or just another thing to put their eyeballs on in their LinkedIn inbox. And the second thing is like, this is the time for offense, right? This is the time to invest in whatever way you can. This is not the time to sit back and say, hey, I don't want to discount you 10% on my rate card. Like, I want to give you 2 or 3 engineers. Let's stand up something that moves the world.
All the way across. Let's talk about different types of customers that are out there.
Yeah. So how do you have all these different conversations with all these characters? Right?
There's lots of personalities out there, right? But I think they fall into like 3 or 4 buckets, right?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that's really interesting, and this is a trap that most sales organizations unfortunately fall into through good management. So good management tells us when something works, you do more of it, right? You make that process repetitive, you train it to the nines, and you really figure out how to say the same thing again and again to predict success.
Right.
But what's happening is that you get a pandemic and people are changing environment and changing comfort levels and changing attention spans and changing spending limits, right? There might be a double click on each of these individual buyers that would help us extend and understand their overall capability. So there's 4 or 5 kind of big buckets. A lot of people have a lot of takes on this. I'm going to give you kind of the simple ones that I think about. So I think about the number crunchers, the captains, the feelers, and the visionaries, right?
I like it. Okay.
And let's start with the reverse in mind, right? Because we all know a visionary, right? I mean, historically, the archetype for this is like the Steve Jobs of the world, right? They came out there, likability aside, and just said, I'm going to change the world. You can be with me or without me, but this is where I'm going. And here's what I'm going to do, right? And that can work in limited circumstances. Now, the challenge with visionaries, though, right, in this mindset is they don't have as much control and resource. You got to think a little bit about when you pitch to them, it's not going to be about the safe and secure plan, right? It's about the big idea, right? It's about what goes to the board.
Yeah.
You get serious investment, right?
Gotcha.
Now, you compare that to maybe some of the more problematic communicators during these kind of very virtual times, such as the feelers or the empathetic kind of relators, the people that really value relationships. And these people because you've walked into their office before and, there is like pictures of all the fun hobbies and causes and kids and curiosities that have sort of explored, and sort of kind of taken part in their world. These people are going to want to still understand how they can have a relationship with you. They want to be reinforced and told that there's an opportunity where they can call you directly, right? And you got to think a little bit harder about that when it turns out for communication methods being potentially limited to Zoom, right? No more show-ups or conferences or the like, right? Now, compare that to a real captain mentality, somebody who runs maybe a revenue organization or a sales team. And that person is out there and they're looking for simplicity and they're looking for momentum and they're looking for driving. Right?
Absolutely.
And so you have to really simplify your messages and really focus and keep the main things the main things. Whereas on the other side of that, a number cruncher not only wants to see a lot of detail, but wants to really feel supported in your depth and breadth of
Yeah.
thought leadership.
They want to know their backed up. Absolutely.
That's right. And so you have these four really unique archetypes that are floating out there. And if you haven't done a quick inventory of what's my message to the visionary versus the feeler versus the captain versus the number cruncher, this is the time to take a step back and really think about it.
I love it, man. This is some really, really awesome insight. And I can't thank you enough for being part of this. Like I said, we're trying to get some information out to help people, to motivate people. And we're all in this crazy thing together. And I got to say, you got one of the best Zoom backgrounds right now. I know your wife made that awesome bird background for you. And Ashley does some great work out there. And just let our viewers who are watching this and not listening to it can see that
that's right. Yeah. So if you want custom wallpaper right now, it's one of the few things you can ship in the middle of the pandemic from ashleyscecil.com. That's
there
right.
you go. Remember that one. That's for sure. If people want to go to Headstorm, just what, headstorm.com?
It is. It's headstorm.com. That's where we do all of our software and data pipeline building. It's where we focus on aligning all of our technology efforts to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And it's also how we do a lot of our upskilling and reskilling for design thinking, design engineering, and also sales enablement, right? The things that I just talked about, bringing these software and services to life.
Very cool stuff. Can't thank you enough. Be safe out there. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Jonathan. Have a great day. Take care.
You too.
Cheers.